Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals. Welcome to the show, Innovation Management. We have talked about the beer game last time. The beer game is here. And thank you for playing again. We have a new scoreboard. The winner is this company here, number 7, with 6,478 euro. The winner in a negative sense, obviously, because they have produced nothing but cost. If we look at their supply curve, that was really starving everyone. Nobody had beer. And in the end, they ended up with a huge stockpile of beer and with a huge cost. So let's see how some of the others did. There we have some in the midsection, 1,036. So they kept pretty low in the beginning, but in the end, that's what really ramped up your cost, you guys who played game number 11, that you ended up with a too big of a backlog. No stock, but everybody remained thirsty here. And now some of the real good ones. Here we have one 482. So how did they do it? They assembled quite a big amount of stock, which led to a very low backlog. And then they came down with the stock, so they had very a low backlog in the end. We see here that if we extrapolate from here, the backlog is ramping up, but actually still altogether very good. Stock is less of a penalty than backlog. So stock here is, although it's so high, it didn't cost you guys as much as the others did it cost to have so much backlog. And the winner of this game is team number 9 with a cost of 239 euro only. And so we see that the stock remains below 35 or 36. So probably 38. That's the highest that we ever had. The backlog is almost 0 the entire time. And guys, there's quite a bit of revenue, so lots of orders, and you kept this in very well balance. So that's probably as good as you can as you can get. Very good. Thank you. Now let's see. Here's the chat. Can you all hear me okay? And any questions or comments about the beer game and about lean management in general? Are you alive? We hear you loud and clear. Thank you. I'm glad. And we are alive. Very good. Okay. Enjoyed the game. Well, thank you. I enjoyed it too. I got an email from their sales manager asking if I wanted to become a paying customer, but their offer is like 250 euro for 3 months. And I said, I'm sorry, I can only play this game once per year, and 250 euro is a bit steep for me. And I never heard back of him, so I thought he would give me a better offer, but apparently they're too busy playing beer game. So today, first of all, the logistics. Sabine, you asked last time, do we have a final date for the exam? The date for the exam is going to be July 21st, and it will be a standard written exam. And the I thought we could pull it up, as I said earlier, but the testing exam commission for the entire university. Yes, Elena, I will answer your question in a second. So we have the time frame for the exams, for the standard exams, for all those where the lectures are also in this semester, is July 18 to July 31st. And all of the repetition exams, so those where lectures were last semester, are going to start from beginning of June. Did you receive a document from the THD saying that some exams maybe will take place at home? That is an option, but I don't see currently how we do it. I told you that for all the international students who can't come to Germany, I would need an email or some information how many there are, and I cannot promise anything, but I will try to find a solution so you guys can also participate in the exam, and we'll find some other way for you to do this. But I would need to know who this is. So everybody who I don't hear from, I expect that you guys and gals, can actually participate in person on the 21st of July. Could you tell us an example for last week's 9 wastes for the variation? Elena, yes, I can. Variation. Variation means doing things in different. Every time you do something, you do it a little differently. So if your product was, I have nothing, no better example. Your product was this computer mouse. It's from Microsoft in this case. My guess would be that if we open 1,000 of these mice, they will all be exactly the same. Variation would be that one time the label, there's a little label in the battery compartment. One time it's attached on the left side, one time it's attached on the right side. One time the battery is shrink wrapped, the other time the battery is not shrink wrapped. So variation just means not doing the same things, not doing like standard work. Like we had this pig example where we talked about the standard work and documentation, which should be with pictures, and so everybody can do it. It's basically this idea. If we don't have a good process description, everybody chooses to do it a little differently, then somebody leaves and somebody else does the work, and then your product will change, and you will never have a stable product. That's variation. That's a quality. It leads to quality defects, and it also leads to inefficiencies in a lean sense. Now, when we talk about the innovation process, obviously we want to be creative and we want to do new things. So variation here would actually mean that anytime you do a project, we start like the V-model process. Every time you do a project, you change your V-model process slightly, or you don't have a process at all. So sometimes you have a kickoff meeting, sometimes you don't. So here it's not applied to the product that you develop, but more to how you go about developing the product. Any other questions or comments? You're welcome. Sure. So let's talk about project management right here. Project management is going to be our topic today. what do you guys know about project management? Please just let me know any of your thoughts and I will try to capture them on the mind map. Maybe let's give it some structure. Let's ask a question first. What is a project?
Maybe a project is that you make a product or anything else as a group with many other peoples.
Yeah, doing something with others or together with others. That would qualify for any party. So let's see. Someone takes, oh, sorry. Someone takes responsibility. Yes, a project has an established period, established time period with beginning and ending. It has a target. A goal, a path to reach a goal, path to reach the target, goal. Goal is the same word as target. Very good. What else?
Project has an aim.
Aim is the same word as target, isn't it? Ziel. Aim, target, goal, same thing. Estimate or forecast something on the basis of present trends. You estimate time, effort, cost, for example. Yes. Set of regular operations leads to beneficial goal for the company. A set of regular operations. Target-oriented and specific requirement which needs to be planned. Specific set of requirements. Involves planning. And doing something together with others, which means we have team members. Yeah, I think it's pretty close. Let's talk about, while we're at it, let's talk about mouse production. So let's say we need 2 people to produce a mouse because one guy assembles the electronics, or one person, and the other person assembles the mechanic. Maybe a third person, so we need 3, puts the whole thing in a bag and wraps it for shipment. So 3 people. It has a beginning and an end. It has an established time period. It's described somewhere. Assembly of the mouse takes altogether 7.5 minutes. It has a goal, a target. We need to assemble a mouse. Someone takes responsibility. All of the 3 people take responsibility for each of their work steps. a set of regular operations that's certainly there. There's a few hand grips or a few things that you have to do. So there's a work process. Involves planning. At least it did in the beginning when they did the first mouse assembly. They had to plan that ahead. Would the assembly of this mouse be a project? What do you think? Is this a project? Just say yes or no. It's a process, or like part of a project. Microsoft has been doing these mice for many years. A project doesn't repeat itself. I need the mouse to write. Project does not repeat itself in the same way. It's a one-time thing. Yes. See what Brian has to say. I think there is two types of project, long-term project and a one-time project. I think, well, we'll go into more documentation of this, but everything that we've said so far is correct, maybe with the exception of a regular set of operations. So I'll put a question mark here. Often projects involve standard procedures or processes like the V model. So in that sense, it is a set of regular operations, but what you do in the project should be different. I think one thing that is really important that we have not covered specifically, although it is kind of implied here, is that a project involves risks. Because this particular project has not been done before. What could these risks be? What would project risks be? Financial risks, financial commitment. Yes. What else? Market risks. We're done with our product after 3 years of project work, and then the market has changed and they don't need it anymore. Nobody wants to buy it. Or we just invented Corona beer. Bad idea right now. I'm really sorry for these guys. risk that some activities may take longer than estimated. May take longer, there could be delays. Yes. So generally, see, Hendrik has some more ideas. Yes, time. Yeah, there's technical risks. Will the product work? There's also resource risks, especially people, but also tools. Now, the risk part, there's a number of things that are specific to projects and that make projects different from producing mice. Let's look at our first lecture when we used Discord and when we first got together. That was not a long-term project, it was a short project, but it was a project. And we had some issues. We had some technical difficulties. We had like sound problems. I wasn't used to using the tools and all of these things. So now it should be pretty much routine. I don't see this lecture as a project because it's something that's scheduled. We do this every Friday. It still involves some risks, I admit that. But basically, it is something that is becoming more and more routine now. And that's the same thing with producing mice. These are not projects. It's your everyday work. So if you clean your dishes, you wouldn't see that as a project. If you brush your teeth, that is not a project. If you go to class every day, every week, these are not projects. But to do your master degree, that certainly is a project. You had to take the decision, you had to take planning, you had to look at finances, resources, time, living. Now people can't travel to Germany, have to take the remote class, there's risk with the exam. So that is actually a project. It involves several people. It involves your friends, possibly your family, your spouse. It involves obviously people like myself, like lecturers, the institution, university, and so on. So there's a number of stakeholders, of people involved, and there's a number of things that can go wrong, including the actual performance risk that you flunk your exams and you don't get your degree, or you have to wait longer. There's a risk of delay. So that would be a project. But going to class like every Friday, that is not a project. That's only a repetitive task. That is in the context of a bigger project. That is true. So the project is purposeful and it has a start and a finish. I think we've covered this already. So it has a time period with a beginning and an ending. That is really important to projects. It has a target, a goal, and it has a path to reach the goal. Projects are very often made up of small processes, but there's obviously things that are never a project, like brushing your teeth. That's not a project. I mean, it's maybe a project when you learn it your first time with 3 years and you get your little toothbrush with Maya on it or something, and then you start brushing your teeth yourself with 3 or 4, I don't know, I don't remember. That is a project in the beginning. It probably also involves some risk, but since then it's not a project anymore. So anything that is repetitive, standard work. Also our Charlie's repair shop, maybe the first hip repair was a project, but since it's standard work and he does it every day, it wouldn't be a project. Now, if he would come across a totally new type of computer system or some bigger system where he has no experience, that could turn into a project, and it involves risk. So the innovation is really also innovation is an important part of projects as well, that you have to do something new that you've not done before. Beginning and ending, not standard work, something that you don't. There's projects that you do alone, like you define a project for yourself, but a typical project in the broad useful definition for our context is actually that it involves several people. I have spent time in companies doing consulting projects where it involved R&D, and usually R&D is the R&D projects, or the R&D work is segmented into projects. There is a part of the work that we would not call project, for example, ongoing change management and maintenance of the product. Let's say this mouse, it has some semiconductors, some chips, some microprocessors in it. The manufacturer of the microprocessor changes something, so you have to do maintenance. It's standard work. It's not very innovative. It's only, you have to look at the new data sheet, you have to make some adjustments to the circuit, and you do a new version of the same mouse that has basically the same functionality. So that is not a project. So also in R&D, research and development, we have a lot of work that is standard work that's done every day. You talk to suppliers. There's many things that are not project work, but very often, or typically in R&D, the new product development, because it's an innovation project, is, or an innovative product, but that becomes then an innovation project because it has a beginning and an ending, and it involves risks. I have been to companies that said, we're doing a project, and I try to find where the beginning of the project was. And basically they said, well, the beginning, we have no beginning of this project. We've been doing this for 10 years. That is not a project. So there is companies that don't structure their R&D work in projects, and that makes it really, really difficult to manage the R&D process. Because if you have a project that involves risk and involves planning and so on, you want to do a kickoff, you want to do lessons learned, and you want to wrap the whole thing into the context of a project. And today we will talk about managing a project and what is required to do that. And companies that don't structure their R&D work into projects, but that have like just ongoing development of something, but they don't structure it into projects, they typically do a poor job with respect to their productivity and efficiency in R&D, because if it's everyday work, it's hard to manage when it actually involves risk and should be a project. So it's really important also not to manage the everyday repetitive work as project when it doesn't involve risk and has not a beginning and an ending. So we need to make sure where to apply this project management method that we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's talk about managing projects. What comes to your mind when you hear managing projects? Have you managed a project? Who has managed a project? You need a project manager. We need to manage time, quality, risks,
Cost.
operations. Did you want to say something? There was some audio. I believe it was in.
Costs.
Pardon?
Costs.
Costs. I'm
Manage
sorry. Yeah. Does the bachelor thesis count as as this experience as a project? What do you think, Vitor? Yes. Let's look at the criteria. It has a defined beginning and has a defined ending. It involves more than one person. It has risks. It has a target. It requires planning. It is innovative. It's something that you have not done before, not that specific thesis about this specific topic. You may have done other papers, so you may follow a standard process on how you go about, like collecting data first, analyzing the situation, planning, trying to find a solution, validating the solution. So you follow a kind of a standard process also for your bachelor thesis, but this particular thesis is something new that you've not done before. There's a risk of delay, there's a risk of failure. So all the conditions for a project are there. Coordinate between different team leaders, department to ensure every workflow is smooth. Yes. Stakeholders, people who participate in the project or contribute. All of this has to be managed. Let's find some examples. Or maybe first some other about these are the things that have to be managed, and you need a project manager to manage all these things: time, quality, costs, stakeholders, so people who have an interest in the project, stakeholders. Project. Its outcome. So this is what you need to manage. What are typical things that you would do in a project? Typical activities.
Maybe control or speak with the other members.
Yeah.
To get the information you need to manage.
Obtain the information required to set tasks, set specify, monitor that the tasks are done. Monitoring and controlling to achieve all of the project's goals within the given constraints. Yes. Balance, put it in my words, but no. Balance the various influences, constraints with respect to optimizing projects performance. Yeah, very good. To speak to all team members, we could probably do regular meetings. You also do kickoff meeting at the beginning of the project. Okay. We haven't missed anything. We'll switch over to training. I have a lot of material from Belden. I hope that doesn't annoy you. It's just good, good resource, easy resource for me, because there's a lot of material there. This is a project management training that was done at Belden, and it was actually one of my staff members who prepared this training, and it was done internationally. So he rolled this out to the other patients in the project management training in the area of R&D mainly, but it wasn't necessarily limited to R&D. Because there's a lot of material, the past classes have asked me to highlight what is important in these slides and in these documents. So there is some yellow highlighting in here, which doesn't mean it's the only thing that you should look at, but basically it's a bit more focused then. So let's jump over the sections, or I can. So section 1, getting started. Section 2, creating your project. Setting up for success, planning, organizing the team. Then tools, we haven't really covered tools. I think in the Xmind, tools is an important part, that you use tools for managing the project, and that everybody agrees on what tools you want to use. And then actually the implementation. And there's some examples. We won't do the entire class. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet or exceed stakeholder needs and expectations of a project. The project manager, sometimes referred to as the project coordinator or project leader, manages the details of the project on a day-to-day basis. This is an ongoing challenge that requires an understanding of the broader contextual environment of the project and the ability to balance conflicting demands. Okay, that's basically what we discussed. One aspect is important here, the stakeholders. So you always have, they call it a stakeholder, somebody who takes an interest in the project. And that is also a typical characteristic of a project. So let's maybe cover that quickly. Um, there is a project sponsor and stakeholders. A person who orders and acquires the project. Others take an interest. So typically you have the executive management, the R&D manager, somebody, or the product manager who defines we will need to do this product development. Then the project is initiated. And we talked about the selection process and the valve and finding the gold nuggets, finding the right project. This is all before. And then somebody says, this is my project. I want you to do this. This is the resources that I give you for that. That's the amount of money that we've set aside. That is the space that you can work in. This is your office building. This is your tools. This is your time frame that you've set. So somebody has to set up the framework and give you the resources. And then within that framework, you as project manager and you as the project team can actually do your work and try to manage all the different factors. And then there's other stakeholders. For example, stakeholders would be, let's say if your project sponsor is the R&D manager, a stakeholder would also be the general manager of the company, but it would also be the salespeople who are waiting for the project. It would be the head of production who says, I want to produce the product. It would be maybe shareholders of the company who are looking what is the path of innovation that you're taking. It would also be your employees, not every individual employee, but let's say that your staff as a whole, where the R&D staff says we want to do projects that are demanding or that are utilizing our expertise. So there's all kinds of stakeholders that take basically an interest in the project. So why would you want to be a project manager? Projects create value. If you look around, you'll see things that couldn't have been created without projects. The building we're sitting in, PowerPoint, the design for the PC that's running PowerPoint, the design for the engine in the taxi, bus, or car you arrived in. It's all written in pre-corona times. Nothing applies here. Factory that made your soda can or your coffee cup. Turn my camera on because I need to show you my nice coffee cup, which was a project my mom did for me. She asked me, it has an integrated circuit. You probably can't read it. It has 555 on it. It's a right. That's 555, which is a multi-vibrator circuit. So actually this is a real, it has a battery here. It has a battery and has a light bulb on top. And actually, if it was real electronics and not just ceramics, it would actually flash the light. So that was a project my mom did for me. I did the schematics and she put it into this cup. Just because we're talking about coffee cup. Without projects, there wouldn't be many of the products that we take for granted, and without project managers, there wouldn't be projects. Okay. Projects shape our world. the Apollo moon landing program. Complex work is often best organized and executed through projects. It's actually a tendency, a trend, that more and more work is done in projects. Because what we said before, if you don't organize it in projects, if it is something that you like just treat as daily work, repetitive work, but it actually involves risks and innovation and things that are hard to manage because it's unplanned, because things occur that you have not foreseen, then it's really, really difficult if you don't apply the project management tools and still accept that your outcome is going to be managed. Therefore, a lot of work that has been traditionally done by departments, we have the finance department, we have the mechanical department, the software department, we have the sales department, and all of these departments just work like every day. They go to work every day, they do something, they interact somehow. That is not typically project work, it's department work. And a lot of companies found out that this is not a good way to manage complex things that have a lot of uncertainty and risks. So rather than doing all the work in these departments, they form project teams. So a guy from finance, a guy from sales, a guy from purchasing, a guy from production, a guy from mechanical, and so on. They all get together and they form this project team. Then they do a kickoff, then they do the project, and then they part again at the end. And people have found out that it's a lot more, that it's better to apply project management tools and methods to these complex tasks. So there is a tendency that more and more work shifts over to project work. There's also a tendency that standard employee contracts are changed or traded for project employments. So more and more people work in projects, and they may still be employed, but they don't have a standard everyday job. They only have project jobs, and so they're going from project to project. So it seems that this is also changing our work environment. Okay, why? Motivation, evolution of customer demand. The customer is more important than it used to be in the beginning of the industrialization. And since we have global markets now and we compete on a global scale, markets are so transparent. So it's basically a race for speed that wasn't there many years ago. So the race for speed, who has the first product, who's first on the market, is really, really important. And it's lesser and lesser the quality and the characteristics of the product itself, but who can actually meet the customer's demand in the best and fastest and quickest way. And you see that Amazon, for example, have really perfected this. Amazon is not producing anything. I mean, they're basically a logistics platform and a logistics supplier. So they buy stuff anywhere and sell it. So they obviously they also have video production and so on. But basically the core is that they're logistics. But what they have, they own the customer. They have perfected to be very, very close to the customer and see what the needs of the customer are. And all of their activities are targeted at getting in better touch to the customer. So they have this multi-channel approach. We have 3 Alexas in our house, for example, another interface to the customer, getting really close, sitting in our living room. They have Prime channel video, so they do the entertainment side. Again, they're interfacing with the customer. They make it really, really easy. Customer support, when I have a problem with a shipment or a product with Amazon, it's just I click a button, they give you a call. I don't have to wait for like half an hour in a telephone loop. The call comes within a few seconds and I can talk to a real person. So they're really perfecting this customer interface. And that's basically also what the project management is about. Seeing who's your who's your customer and trying to be as close and as flexible to meet the customer's demand or your stakeholders' demands as possible. Project management is change management. Now, because all we said about the risks involved, projects will never go as planned. And one could say, okay, if it never goes as planned, why do I plan in the first place? It would be a stupid mistake to say I'm not planning because the plan's not going to come true. Rather, the plan is something, it's basically a baseline throughout your entire process that you will need to do the project that you have completely thought through. So first of all, when you plan, you come to think of all the other things that you have to do. There's long lead items that you have to order in time. There is maybe a review where you need a certification from an official body and you have to start that. So just by planning, you think of all the things that are necessary to be done for this project. That's important. But also, all the dependencies are basically laid out and thought through. So we know that the plan is not going to come as we've planned it, but all we have to do is when we have something that deviates from the plan, a variation, change, then we have to only look at the increment, at the delta. So what has changed from the plan? So the cost has increased by 5% from the plan. You don't have to do the baseline calculation again. You only have to calculate, okay, increasing the cost by 5%, how can I compensate this 5%? Or where can I go to get an additional 5%? So it's a lot easier to only make that or mitigate that change or work with the change than doing the entire calculation for all of the dependencies in the project. This is why we're doing project planning. So project management is change management because we have our plan and then everything that changes from the plan, we have to look at that in particular. Feel free to interrupt if there's comments or questions or if I'm boring you. History of project management. Okay, developed in the 1940s. Way back. So important. I'll jump over these slides. I don't want to bore you and you can read if you're interested, but it's certainly not critical. What is a project anyway? A project is a one-time, unique attempt to do something that has not been done before. It's the definition that you came up with before. It involves people, systems, and the organization. Said all this. It has a purpose, goal, a target, and it has risks. So basically, the purpose means we're getting a reward. We're doing it because we're getting an outcome, but it has risks, and we're willing to take those risks because the outcome is bigger and outweighs the risks. The project is an investment. It's the same as if you buy, as a company, you buy a new machine, you build a new house, something. A project is an investment. You're investing something, you're putting in resources and money, and the outcome will make your company more valuable, give you better products in the market, all of these things. Understanding the mix of these three inputs is important to making the project a success. We'll talk about the mix of these inputs, but it's not highlighted because it's just a summary of the other items. A project does something that cannot be done by regular operations. That is really important. It is something that cannot be done by regular operations, meaning it is something that really involves special activities, special work. Oops. Okay. A project produces a facility that will be handed over to operation managers so that they can use it to earn an attractive return on the original investment. That is true for production environment. If it's a product, then it's being handed over to the product manager and to the sales organization. A project is an attempt to create discontinuous change not achievable through regular operations. Projects and project management are special cases of operations and operations management. What distinguishes them is their characteristic of uniqueness. In project management, goals matter more than roles, change matters more than stability, and managing risk is more important than avoiding risk. Please note that this definition here and this class, this course of projects also involves projects that a company would do. So we have two types of projects in companies. We have the product development, which is basically the things that R&D departments do all the time. And we have projects that say, I don't know, a project to improve the work conditions or to introduce a new software tool into the company, to introduce a new ERP system like SAP, for example, or something like that. These all would be projects that have to do with the company and the operation. So when this guy here talks about operation, that's basically what he means. He means we're doing a project, or that's part of what he means. We're doing a project where we're actually changing how we work together in a company. Projects involve technologies and systems and people, and this in different combinations. As a general rule, the further project is positioned towards the people and the end, towards the people end of scale, the riskier and more challenging it's likely to be. So typically, the risks with people are bigger than the risks with technology. That's not always true, but managing people and managing relationships of people and motivating people, it's very often more challenging and demanding, also more risky than the actual technology behind that. So we'll do a little example. We have contracted to implement 70 Microsoft, doesn't matter which manufacturer, CRM licenses for a wholesale trader of PC equipment operating in China and Malaysia. CRM is customer relationship management. That is a tool to manage your customer relationship. So basically, it contains the names and addresses of all your customers and the people that work for customers, all the contacts. So a salesperson that has seen a customer will do a little sales report afterwards and say, I have met Mr. Müller and we have discussed this and he wants to have a proposal, and next time I'm visiting him, we should, talk about a specific topic. So all of these things are done in a CRM system. So a CRM system is meant to, here, it's a wholesale trader, ein Großhändler. So this company sells PC equipment in China and in Malaysia. The customer believes her sales force productivity is low. So the customer thinks we're not selling enough PCs in our target markets. They want to use the CRM for sales activity planning and control, for funnel management and bookings forecasting. Sales activity planning oder Planung von Verkaufsaktivitäten, Verkaufsaktionen, so marketing campaigns, sales campaigns, and so on. And control, managing those campaigns. Funnel funnel. A funnel is Trichter. So the funnel is, sales funnel is where you put in your sales leads. So first time you have a contact with a customer, somebody sends an email or calls or comes to your trade show booth, that is a sales lead. That's at the top end of the funnel. So, and there's hopefully a lot of sales leads that you put in. Now you have to start qualifying those leads, which means you move then down in the funnel. And obviously some of the leads that you put into this funnel, they are not qualified. They're not actually interested. You will call them back. So that would be the first activity. You had a first contact, then you call them back and say, well, we talked at the trade show, you came to our booth, we handed you out some material. How do you think about our product offering? Are you interested? Shall we give you a visit, or would you like more information, or what can we do together? You want a quotation? And then this guy says, well, no, I was just roaming around and I thought that was interesting, but it's actually not what I was looking for. So that goes out, and this is why this funnel has this funnel shape, because in the beginning you have many leads, and then once you qualify them, you sort out those that are not interested or don't qualify, are not successful, are not looking to be successful. Then they become less and less, and in the end of the funnel you have those that actually become customers and buy something. That's the idea. And typically sales organizations manage their funnel by giving credits or scores or some way of ranking their sales, and depending on how many contacts and activities were done with a customer, it becomes more and more likely. So they kind of move through a qualification system where you say, well, this is an unqualified lead, or that is a person who has had quotations and is likely to make the decision within the next 2 weeks or so. That would be at the bottom end of the funnel. And all of this is done with a CRM tool. So funnel management means to manage that entire sales process. Bookings and forecastings, that's actually then the financial and the controlling side. So the outcome of that funnel is that you say, we have all of our customers who are in the funnel. If they would all buy the project or buy the product, that would be 1 million euro for next month, for example. And then you say, well, sorry, some of them I see the likelihood for their project at 90%. Some of them I see it at 10%. So you value their revenue with the likelihood that they're actually gonna buy, and then you use that to do forecasts. So with that likelihood, 10%, 50%, 90%, it's always hard to estimate, but that's how people do it. You will say, well, of the 1 million potential that I have in my funnel, I think that probably 380,000 will actually come true next month. That would be then forecasting. And you tell production, well, we'll probably have 380,000 euro of revenue. So make sure you have the right capacity. And then everybody else can start planning. Is that a lot? Is that less than last month? And so on. So they make arrangements for that. And that's called forecasting. So basically CRM tool manages the entire sales process. And you can look at sales like you look at a factory. It's just producing customers, producing revenue in the end. Okay, questions. What do you think is the business purpose for the project? That's up to you now. To invest in the projects that will give the higher investment return. Okay, the customer wants a return for this investment. They invest in the project, they want a return. Okay, what else? What is the business purpose for the project. We're a service provider. So we are a company that provides CRM software and installs the software, trains the people, all of these things. Yeah, Swapnil. It's a license implementation in China and Malaysia. So we're implementing these CRM licenses. So this software tool with 70 seats, 70 people who run it, who use it in the operation of China and Malaysia. That is what we are being contracted for. What is the business purpose for the project? To boost the business. Exactly, Brian. Very good. Widespread market, moving, expanding, improve the sales and the productivity force from our customer. Yes. Very, very good. You're onto it. Does the customer, this company, this wholesale trader in Malaysia, do they need a CRM tool? No. It's not going to feed them. It's only cost them money. They don't need a CRM tool. They want to do more business. The CRM tool is only a means to doing more business, but they don't need the tool itself. So there's no benefit they have from just getting the tool. It is what the tool does for them, which is boosting their business. So they want to bring up their sales. Okay, next question. How will the work in the project be divided between people, systems, and organization? We said projects involve people, systems, and organization, and it's the focus is sometimes more on the people, sometimes more on the organization. Where would you put the focus? I'm getting a cake here. Pretty neat. I'm sorry for you guys, you don't get a cake. How would you divide the work between people, systems, and organizations? I don't see any answer. I think you're startled by the question. Well, first of all, it's a software project. We're going to implement this Microsoft whatever CRM tool. So we have to install it in their computers, set up their servers, and so on. And then also the sales force has to work with it. And we need to make sure it works in China and Malaysia. So there may be some cultural aspects. We don't know how salespeople in China and Malaysia are. Maybe they don't put any data into the tool. Then the tool is not worth anything if you don't feed it with data. But it could be a cultural problem. So in the foreground, there's a technical question, but we will see that there's a lot of systems and organization and people behind that. So there's a lot of questions that have to do with the culture, the salespeople, and so on. What is the facility we're going to build? Well, we're going to build a software system, a CRM system that's to be used by salespeople. How will it be operated after we finish building it? Good question. And also same question, who will operate it? So go ahead and answer. I just don't want to keep everybody waiting for too long. If you don't really know what to answer here. So we are the specialist for the CRM tool, but we will not be around in China and Malaysia forever. So it's not us who will operate the tool. So in order for this venture, this project to become successful, we have to make sure that these people can actually run and operate it and also make small changes and so on after we have left. How will the business purpose be achieved? We talked about this. We talked about installing the system, but also looking at that the people can do this, can actually work with it. Who will be responsible for achieving the business purpose? Who will be responsible for achieving the business purpose? What do you think? All of the team, all the people who will be involved on the training to use the CRM, the client, or the business manager. Our company, the whole management. This is a core question that may depend. In some cases, the client, and in some cases, our company. Now, remember, because that is the key question here, and that's the point that I'm also getting at. We have been hired to install these CRM licenses. We have a specification that says install 70 places, do some basic training, blah, blah, whatever. That's what's specified. The customer's goal is to do better business. There is a gap between installing the tool and achieving the business purpose. So let's say this cultural difference, nobody in China is willing to, because they think maybe my customer data this is my asset. That's really, that makes myself valuable. I don't want to share this with anyone. But that's what the CRM tool is there for. It's basically to share this information with others, so internal salespeople can call up the customer and help and assist and so on. So that would be a cultural problem. We have done, as a project provider, we have done the entire work, but it's not accepted and not being used. So, and then the business purpose will not be fulfilled. And we can always say, well, tough luck, because we just installed the CRM tool. But that's the thing that we're gonna be getting at. I thought there was another page to this. Maybe there is, but I don't remember where it is. Let's do an example with that. So we take this example. And we have two companies. Supplier A. Supplier A supplied 70 CRM license. Did basic training. Kept their goal. Kept their cost target. So they stayed within their cost target. CRM tool. Oh, they also implemented all features. But CRM tool is actually not used by the sales team of our customer, supplier B. Ditto. They did supply the 70 licenses. They did a lot more training. They overran budget and time. Sorry, my reading's bad. My writing's so bad. Overran budget and time, so they didn't get finished in time and in budget. They took more money. They implemented only partial features. CRM tool is used. I should say is being used. So with supplier B, there was heavy fighting because, as I said, they overran their budget, they overran their time schedule. It's actually not to specification, so it's only a partial implementation of the features. Who do you think did a better job in the project? Supplier A or supplier B? Oh, your answer. A, B, A, B, A, B. Hard to say, isn't it? A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, 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 A. B, because they actually convinced the company to use it. Who do you think will be hired again by this company? There's a whole load of messages coming up. Several people are typing. Depends on who you ask. Controlling department might hire again supplier A, but the staff head of the department would hire supplier B. Really good answer, Annie. Absolutely. It depends on who you ask at the customer. A delivered as listed in the specifications. The company which ordered it is responsible to make its employees use it. Jonas, I'm completely with you. Only the business purpose was they don't need a tool. They don't need a CRM tool. So company A, supplier A, has delivered a perfect CRM tool in budget, in time. They did everything as specified, but it has not been a successful project to the company because nobody's using it. So maybe let's envision a situation that company B faced. They started out deploying the 70 licenses. They started with some training, and then they found out that the tool is way too complicated. It has way too many features, and nobody's using it because the sales force in Malaysia is not like a sales force in Germany, and they have just, you know, the salespeople don't have formal education or training. They basically need a tool with 3 buttons and not more. So it seems that we're just guessing, but it seems that supplier B did a lot more training because they found that it's not going to be successful. We're going to stay within specification, but we will not be successful for the customer because the tool is, if it's perfectly implemented, nobody's going to use it because it's just too complicated. So they implemented only a few features, a few functions, and they did a lot of training on those few functions. It took them more. They overran budget and time, but they managed it that it's actually became a success for the company, for the customer. So I would guess then that in the long run, supplier B would be hired again and supplier A would not be hired again because they did not do a successful project in the sense of they didn't meet the business sense. Now, supplier B failed because they should have done a better job managing the change with the customer. So they should have, stopped and worked that out with the customer and said, well, if we keep on doing our plan and we do the same thing as specified, it's not going to be successful for you guys. So they should have worked out with the customer a better plan and a change in the project, which obviously they failed to do. So for supplier B, it may be a financial disaster because possibly they're not even getting paid for the project, or they get paid a lot less because the specification has not been fulfilled, although for the customer they were successful. So if we summarize, and that's not everything that can be said here, but A probably gets paid because all formal requirements are fulfilled. May not get hired again because the business goal for the customer was not achieved. They may not get hired again because the business goal for the customer was not achieved. B. This project manager probably has a huge problem with his own boss. So financial loss for B because of the cost overrun may not get fully paid, and they have actually higher internal costs because they did more work and more training. I don't know if this is a fixed price project, or we don't know all the details. May get hired again because B achieved the business target for the customer. And what's the lesson for B? They should have managed the change. Change in scope with the customer. That's probably the biggest mistake that they did. They did not manage the scope with the customer. Rather, they started fighting with the customer. And probably there's, as you guys said, that was really good, like controlling department and the operational people. There might be two different sets, and this is why we talked about stakeholders. Because the different people that are involved on different levels, the people that make the contracts, the purchasing department on the customer side, the sales department on our side, and the actual operational people like the project managers. And it's not easy to balance all these different interests and the framework within this group. And that's what I said. It's less the technology. The technology was not the issue here, not the 70 licenses and the software installment, but actually how do the people work with that software. A delivered as listed in the specification. The company which audited is responsible to make its employees use it. Yeah, we read this before. Okay. Okay. I asked you to install a tool that is called Project Libre. It would be nice if you had this tool available after the break, which we're going to do now. Any questions? Or MS Project. Then we'll do a 13-minute break until 3:45. See you in a few minutes. Okay. Then before we turn to something else, I still need to go through some of the additional slides with you. Why are we doing this project? And we talked about these things, so I will not cover everything that's said here because we already discussed that. Every project must have a purpose, but feel free to kind of read through the slides, and maybe there's anything you see that is strange to you or that you want to ask, or so then go ahead and we can discuss. Projects and operations. Operations is the part that you do every time. Project is the thing that is unique. They have still a lot in common. That's said here. They're more alike than people think in some ways. Both have achieving or have conflict of objectives, have constraints. Both transform some kind of input into a higher value output. And also in operations, so in regular operations, there's obviously problems that you have to solve. But the big difference is that the project is something that is unique, while operations, it's repetitive. It's basically always the same type of work and that same thing. Here you have another comparison of the two. Operations more rely on fixed roles. So here we have fixed roles. So people who always do the same thing because it's a department, it's a function, a person that is always responsible to send out the mailings, whatever. Versus on the project side, these are roles that are assigned as part of the project team, and that's also a unique and a one-time assignment. And it's next time that same person may be in a different role in a different project, for example. So here's some more examples about when is a project successful. The Thames Barrier project constructed a flood barrier for London. The project ran late and ran over budget, and we still don't know if the barrier works. But the project was judged a success. The barrier became a tourist attraction, and the project generated a lot of money for its community. The Sizewell B project constructed a new nuclear power station in the UK. The project was completed on time, within budget. The station worked as designed, and all the planned accounting benefit was achieved. But the project was judged a failure because nuclear power stations were just not popular anymore. So that's basically the conflict that we talked about with supplier A and B. Some more examples of that, real life examples. So the question becomes here, who do you ask? When we discussed on would we hire this this project manager again or this supplier again, then the question is a question of who do you ask? Do you ask controlling or do we ask the business manager? So for some here's some measurements. The contractor is satisfied. When can you use it? End minus 1 month. Quality, cost, and time objectives are achieved. You will see at the end, and probably 1 month before the end, you can already look at whether the objectives will be achieved. The owner is satisfied. That's much later. Because you will have to see whether the business outcome is actually achieved. So maybe 6 months later. Business purpose achieved, as I said. So actually, maybe the owner is satisfied after half a year, and the business purpose you can actually measure. There's a return that will be after a year. And then when we have a real return on investment that is in the books, so you actually have created the profit that is tangible in the books, that will be maybe 5 years. So that means depending on who you look at and who you ask and when you ask, the success for a project can mean a number of different things. So avoiding common mistakes, don't make it harder than it is, because projects are inherently risky. Inherently means the risk is embedded into every project, and that's also part of what makes a project a project. So returns are not guaranteed. Project work involves risk and uncertainties which can't be avoided. Projects obey Murphy's Law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And what's more, project managers often make decisions that introduce risks that aren't built into the project. Getting a project right often just means not getting it wrong. That's actually true. So very often project management is just, choosing between the lesser evil. Also das kleinere Übel auswählen, because actually so many things can go wrong and some will go wrong. So you're actually just fighting the different risks and mitigating the different risks and balancing the project in a way that you have least damage, and that is already a success. So project manager's life is actually pretty tough. That obviously means that you should make sure that you manage all the things that you can manage that are not inherently risky. You manage in a very simple and straightforward way, so they don't blow in your face. So don't make it harder than it must be. Most mistakes have been made before. Common mistakes are in setting up the project. For example, the project plan is not aligned with business plan, almost a guarantee of failure. Why is that? Very, very often, if you're a project manager, your boss asks you to do the project and will ask you with your team, what do you estimate? You saw that in the V-model process. At the beginning, we have estimates, cost estimates, time estimates, and so on. So you start estimating, you go back to your manager and say, well, I think it's going to take us a year and it's going to cost 200,000 euro. And then your manager says, oh, that's too late. And it's much too expensive. I need it in half a year and I need it for 100,000. And then you can haggle a little bit with him, and it's gonna turn out you'll have to be done by end of July, so like 7 months if it's the beginning of the year project, and you have maybe 120,000. And in the beginning already that it's not possible to do that because you've done a good estimate, a careful estimate, and you have not overestimated anything. So you've taken out all of the buffers that you may have for any risks, and you know that you're basically set up for failure. So very often projects are not they're like pressed by the management, and other parts not aligned with business plan. So it's basically there's other plans that interfere with the project. A summer festival, and all of your people are going to be involved with the summer festival or with competing projects, and so on and so on. Very often systems are complicated or too weak, and if there's disagreement among stakeholders, that's also a big warning. So if your your boss and your boss's boss disagree, like the owner of the company has a totally different view on the project than your immediate boss, that's also meant, that you're prone to fail, because then you can't basically fulfill both stakeholders' need. So it's really, really important, and good, strong project managers stand up to their managers in the very beginning, because that's where most things go wrong. Once your project is set up in a path that is like quirky, set up for failure, there's basically nothing you can do as a project manager. So you will want to make sure that at the very beginning of the project, with all the stakeholders, everybody who has an interest in the project, it's been made very, very clear, and the rules, you are responsible as project manager to set the rules for this project. And if you can't do it for half the money, then don't agree to do the project, because after you've committed to doing the project, it's all going to be your mistake and your failure, and you can't go back and say, I told you in the beginning, the time frame is too small. Common mistakes: single level plans with hundreds of action lines, tools and methods are too complicated, over optimistic planning and estimation. Common mistakes in the project organization: you plan with people that are not really available. So if you don't have a named team that works in your project, but just promises of teams or like resources that where somebody says I'll can do it on the side or so, but that person actually doesn't have time, it's not going to work. There's some more things. Progress reports that don't compare actual with the original baseline plans. So you do a planning, and then you always want to, this is what we said about planning, you have this baseline, and you always just look at the incremental change between what has actually happened towards your plan. And project managers are, the project manager is hired to manage and control the project. And as such, the project manager is basically, for the scope of the project, outside of any hierarchy. So very often project managers are set up as weak roles in some companies. And then the problem is you are promised 5 people. So they work for you, you plan your project, you work with those 5 people. Then the head of the production department says comes and says, I need Charlie. I need Charlie because we have a huge production problem and he needs to fix that, and Charlie is the only one who can do it. But Charlie is one of your resources. So Charlie is gone for 4 weeks. And then somebody else says, Carl is actually needed he's a mechanical engineer, but he's needed for some maintenance work on some other product where we had a problem and he needs to firefight that. So Carl is gone. So people will, from other departments, they have actually committed the people to you, but because your project manager and their department heads, they will just go in and get your resources out of the project. In a lot of companies, project managers are set up like that. So it's basically the project manager is just a lowly worker. So every department head can basically overrule project managers. These project setups are prone to fail in those companies. So rather what you want to do is you want to set up project managers that are outside of the hierarchy. Very often project managers don't report to within their departments, but that's how I would set it up. And that's also what we did in consulting projects. We set up project managers so they reported to some, the head of program management or whatever, but basically a role that is next to the other department heads, but outside of their hierarchy. So they're not in a reporting line to any of the other departments, not R&D department, not production department, not any other department, to make sure they're not dependent on their an individual superior, but they're basically free to act in the scope of the project and with the power that is delegated to them as a project manager for the scope of the project, which is obviously limited and constrained, but it's a certain box that project manager has full authority and power, and nobody should be able to overrule them outside or within the standard hierarchy. So a huge problem, project managers with too little responsibility or authority. So let's talk about 5 golden rules. And I think they're pretty good. This is why I want to show them to you. Eat the elephant in slices. Manage through the product breakdown structure. That means all the work is hierarchical broken down, and you don't do everything in the same thing. Elephant in slices. So one slice by the other. Don't try to swallow the entire elephant. I'm sorry, I had 2 blocks of lectures this morning. My voice is leaving me. Don't try to tell people how to do the work. Typical problem with project managers, because you're the project manager, you think you have to micromanage all the people in your team. Wrong idea, because then first of all, your team is not going to be loyal to you. They're going to be demotivated. Secondly, you can't be the best expert. Rather, you have a team of experts, and that's why you got them, because they have better expertise. You're the project manager. In a lot of companies, it's done differently. Traditionally, the best technician becomes then the project manager, which is really a bad idea, because project managers and technician are 2 different jobs. 2 different job descriptions, and also it's different things that people have to do to be successful. I'm not saying the same person cannot be a good technician and project manager, but very often they're not. And it's a bad idea, because if you choose the best technician as project manager, he or her, she will always know things better than all of the team members, which pisses them off and makes them really demotivated. And also they're not going to be good at their project management job, because they start involving themselves in the technology and in the details of the product. Rather, that's what we did at Belden. We set up a program where we qualified project managers, and that was like a study course. It was a half-year, 6 months intensive training with a certificate and a test. And of the 12 people who did it in the first round, I think 4 or 5 actually failed the test, because it was really hard. It was really going back to university. And these people became full-time project managers. They had an R&D background, but they really changed jobs, and they went not all of the 12, but I think half of them or so. They became full-time project managers. And after that, and they also, we took them out of the regular R&D organization and put them into a separate organization that had their own reporting line to the general management, to make them strong and make them have authority across the team members that they needed to work with. So project management and technical work are 2 different things. Don't try to tell people how to do the work. Don't ignore big parts of the scope of work. That is the business success with our example, with the CRM licenses. Don't ignore that a big part of the success of the project is whether the sales force will actually use the CRM tool. It's not merely enough to install it and do the training, but it's really getting that last mile that they actually work with it. That is part of the scope of the process. And company B, supplier B, made a mistake in the setting up. They should have actually used that as their success indicator. How many people actually use it? How many leads are in the tool after the first month? Rather than going to a functional specification that we need all these features, they should have said how many people are actively using the tool, and they're going to use only the features that are helpful for them. So that would have been a better measure. And had they set up the scope of work explicitly, what it's really what's relevant to make it successful, they would have done a better job here. Influence and negotiate and get what you want. That's what I said about the setup in the beginning. If you have an owner and a direct superior, and they have different motivations for tasking you for the project, you're set up for failure. And if you think you cannot work because your staff has crappy old computers, don't do the project. You're the project manager. You don't have to, you don't have to commit to that project. You're tasked to make sure the project is being done. And if that is a critical success factor that everybody gets a new laptop or has decent PCs or whatever, or the climate control, the air conditioning in the room is broken, everybody's sweating and is demotivated, whatever. Influence and negotiate whatever you want, and you will see that as a project manager, you have a lot of power and influence and more than you think. But everybody will tell you no in the beginning, and then you say, well, sorry, I can't deliver my project. And don't let yourself, don't let others overrule you. Be firm on your position because it's going to haunt you afterwards. And the most important rule, keep it simple. It's the KISS principle. Have you guys heard of KISS? Keep it simple, stupid. So don't look for the fancy. Don't look for the fancy solution. Keep it simple, stupid. KISS. So one thing we need to discuss is the project triangle. Have you heard of the triangle of project management? Anyone? Nope. Okay. Clear answer. Mahmoud, you have. What have you heard, Mahmoud? It's like that you must make a compromise to the 3 points. And let's look at what the 3 points are. What could the three main things that you have to manage, the 3 main objectives that you have to manage in a project? Cost. Time, cost, and quality. Thank you so much. In German. Q, A, E. In English, QCT. Time, quality, and cost. The triangle of project management. Why is it a triangle? Quality means also functionality. So quality is functionality, features, and how good it's implemented, no defects. So all of that is quality. Cost. What is the project? What are the levels or the types of costs that are involved with projects?
Employees, time they spend, materials, tools, and the development parts.
So the project effort done by the people, so the human resource cost, the cost for tools, investments, like production tools and so on. When we're doing a product development, that is not merely enough. What other cost quality do we have in a product development that we need to watch? Well, obviously there is a product cost. So that becomes then part of the product quality if you want, but basically you can make a cheap product or an expensive product. So you have to watch that the product that you do, if it's a car, for example, the actual manufacturing cost will be within the target. So manufacturing, so production and material, finished product. Okay, that's the cost side. Now the time. That's basically the time span set up for the project. And then it's not only that, yes, Swapnil, the milestone list, so it's also meeting specific deadlines, meeting deadline dates for milestone. For example, if there is a marketing campaign or the product goes to a trade show, which is in some markets, trade shows are like big ones only every 3 or 4 or 5 years. So you, with your new product, you have to hit that trade show. So within the scope of the project, you may only be 4 weeks late. And if the 4 weeks are the time that is actually lets you miss this big trade show, then the whole project is basically lost, because then you can only introduce it to the market a few years later, or you miss that opportunity to introduce it at the trade show. So therefore, it's the time span itself, but it's also meeting certain deadlines, certain dates. Both is a time quality. So why is this a competing triangle? If we're balanced, then we're right in the middle. So we keep everything in check: the cost, the quality, the time. Let's say we're losing out on quality. That would be we're drifting this way. So we're here. We're losing quality. So what can we then do to recover quality? For example, we could invest more money. We could have more tests done. We could ask for external people. So then we would recover quality. So we're more on the side of quality. Closer means better here. I just made up this chart. So we have better quality. We invest. To improve quality. That's one option. So we put in money. The other thing would be we don't put in more money, we just work longer. So we miss our date. So we move basically this way. We stay close to the cost, but we move this way and we say, okay, what's a different color? So we move this way, and this is we just add time to improve quality. So both is possible, and obviously there's it works other ways. Very often, actually, when we add time, we also add cost. So very often these two are in sync. But the basic idea is that you have to you can always try to improve quality, but then it costs more money, or you can save money, so you can bring the cost down, but then you're sacrificing quality, for example. Or rather than in some instances, for example, the electronics industry doing circuit boards, printed circuit boards, there's like a penalty for getting something really fast. So you can get it in like 2 days, and then you pay 5 times or 10 times more than if you had it in 1 month. So you can basically, depending on how you choose your delivery time, the cost goes significantly up or down. So you can actually gain time and catch up delays by investing a lot more money. So these are all linked. Not always in a simple way, but basically very often, if you try to optimize one end, all the two other ends will kind of become bad. So that's the traditional triangle of project management, and you will find it in every literature. You will find QKT, QCT. Now here in this lecture, this is our triangle: quality, cost, time, and we have 2 more. We have 2 more. We have scope and organization. And that is really, that can't be stressed enough. Scope. Do we have some explanations about that? Yeah. Scope. The scope of the work for the project is the project manager's promise to the owner or to the project sponsor. It's the solution to the business problem. So in our example, the CRM tool is actually being used and the sales go up. That is the business problem. That was the real scope. And that was where supplier A and B worked differently, while supplier A was only looking at supplier A was looking at QCT, so budget, quality, exactly as specified, requirements, specification, time, cost, everything perfect, but he was completely ignoring scope and organization. And supplier B did a better job, but failed to deliver in quality in QCT, but they looked at the solution to the business problem and made sure that the people are actually using it. I'm jumping ahead. We'll go back to these. Organization. The organization is the main resource to carry out the scope of the work. The organization is your team, it's the stakeholders in the organization, it's your boss, it's the entire setup. And basically, if you have the organization and the scope of your work in line, so the setup within the organization or the system where your project is embedded is aligned with the scope of the project, the business scope, then you have a robust environment to achieve QCT, which is more of the fine granular adjustment, the day-to-day project work. But the resources and the organization, what is it that you need to do and where am I embedded? Will the department heads get my resources? Can they claim resources and I'm powerless? I can't do anything about it. That's part of the organization. Can somebody tell me that? Well, if I have problems in the project, for example, is there a way that I can escalate? Can I make sure there's organizational changes, or people will help me if I have some internal barriers, for example, in the travel arrangements. My team members can't travel because there's some formal restriction or things like that. This has all to do with the organization. So it's the organizational setup where your project is embedded. So that is hosting your project. So let's put this in the notes as well here. Two more. And they are really important. Scope. The business. Purpose. Everything that really needed for success. In the long run. That is scope. And organization. My organization from the project manager, where the project is embedded into. I don't know if that's an English sentence. So it's resources, management, stakeholders. It's also a little bit of the management culture. Do you have any questions about that? Very often in project literature, it's really simplified. You only find the QCT, but that's really too short. And this is why I wanted to make a point of that. Okay, let's try to make this a bit more tangible. We talked about the objective. And a good way to organize the work that has to be done in the project, it is here in the scope chapter, but it could also be in the, I mean, it could also be in the quality chapter. It's basically how do you, and it has to do with this eating this elephant in slices. So the elephant is up here. I can probably not draw an elephant. I'm not going to try. The elephant is at the top. That's the entire project. And now eating it in slices is we're creating this work breakdown structure. And I'd like to do this with you. It's here at the bottom. To eat an elephant, cut it up in slices. Each work package has, for example, a deliverable product, the person responsible for delivering it, the volume of work needed to complete it, the number of people planned to work on it, estimate the cost, a finish by date and a start by date, and so on. So the work breakdown structure lets you create a project plan top down and bottom up. It's basically we're structuring work into different types of work. You see these headlines here. Type of work here at the top. Type A, type B, type C. So this could be type A could be administrative work, type B could be software, type C could be hardware. Whatever the structure is. And then you have certain packages. And in the first run, what you do, you don't do all the planning, the details. You just write down what is it that needs to be done. And I'd like to practice that with you now. And we can just take the example that's here in this chart. We want to mail Chinese New Year cards to the CEOs of all the customers on our mailing list. I don't know why they're Chinese, but it doesn't matter. Each card will have a photograph of the local office team. Probably this training was in China. Each card will have a photograph of the whole local office team, the signature of all the team members, and a suitable greeting. It will also have a picture of the Chinese zodiac animal for the next year. This Sternzeichen, the Chinese have the monkey and the horse and so on. Any Chinese on the board can probably tell me better what it is. Not really sure. All the cards will be sent by regular service and airmail to our customers' head offices. We won't use the franking machine. We want to use this year's special edition Christmas stamp. Simple example. Try to break down this project into a work breakdown structure. That's something that you can do. You could do it on your own or in your little teams. Come up with, I don't know whether you can share a picture later on. That would be nice. Let's do this within the next 22 minutes. 20 minutes or 17 minutes. No, let's do it in 17 minutes. So we're done at 4:45 with a work breakdown structure. Try to think of what you put in the headline. What is the type of work that needs to be done? and then the different tasks that are necessary to do this. Elena, thank you. That is terrific. That's what I was looking for. I have to say I can't read it, but can you tell us, Elena, what what the headlines are on your work streams?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Get card supply, take the photo, collect signatures, write the message, prepare cards, and send cards.
Yes. Very good. So you've divided it into work streams.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it using the Xmind app.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we tried to divide the activities in small steps, not to see it like a big project, but to see it as activities to achieve. And that's what we sorted here.
Mm-hmm. Can you read the headlines, please? The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. The first one is to check the picture of the local office teams and sort them. The second one would be to collect all the signatures from the team members. The third one would to look for the picture of the Chinese zodiac animal for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And then produce the cards with the special edition Christmas stamps, and then sort the cards per region that we have to send, and then send them by post.
Right. So now you don't have your chart at least doesn't show the individual steps. So basically headlines could be, for example, purchasing, production, team activities. So we have things that have to do with the team. That's all the signatures, that's all the photos, that's more the internal thing. Then production is actually doing the, writing the cards and getting them printed and so on. And purchasing is maybe obtaining the stamps and whatever other material we need. So that would be another example. And then we would have 3 types of works in the beginning: teamwork, or things that involve the team, purchasing, and production. And then you have different packages. Under team, we have taking photos, getting the signature, arranging photo dates, for example. That would be then, you need a photographer, you need dates, you need arrangements, you need a person that is going to be responsible to make the arrangements, a person that is responsible for getting the photos, making sure people are not on vacation, all these things. So you can break it down into a lot more detail if you want. So depending on how granular you want to do that, you can come up with a lot of detailed work packages, or more on a rough level. When we talked about Agile, this becomes then part of our stage planning, Etappenplan. So we can turn this into a stage planning eventually, where we say, well, we have certain things that we're doing at certain times. Generally, in the Agile process, we kept it rather coarse. In traditional project management or project planning, you would break it down finer granularity. So I saw that you have already used the tool. That is very good, and I want to now turn over to the tool. So while you're giving me some more answers on whether or where you have used similar tools, I will just show you a little demo how you can work with such a tool. So we can do this bottom up. So we can start with individual activities. And I would encourage you, if you have not worked with a project management tool before, I would encourage you to use it eventually for example, to plan your master thesis. Would be a good idea to use that. Because if you do the master's thesis with me, for me, I would also actually ask you to do some planning for your master thesis as part of the thesis paper, because that's what I would expect an engineer to do, that there's some level of planning and you not only jump into the work, but also do some planning beforehand. So I hope this is big enough so you can kind of read it. So we can, for example, start with buy stamps. Wrong keyboard. So one activity, buy stamps, buy cards. So we have 2 activities. Then you have the duration. I'm sure you can set this to either English or German, this tool. I haven't really tried it. You can set a duration, and let's say it's just both takes 1 day, because this may not be the actual duration, but we don't have a finer planning granularity. What you can do now is you can do a right click and no. If you press the insert button, you go on one line and you press the insert button, einfügen, you can bring up another line before that, and you can give this one a headline. And this would be from our work breakdown structure. One thing would be everything that has to do with purchasing. So type A work is purchasing. Now, until now, these are all tasks and they're all on the same level. But what we can do now, we can select these 2 and there is a button that says slide in for both. Okay, I was going to show you that, but for somehow I didn't. Reason it doesn't do what I wanted to do. No. Okay, but it's meant to do it like that. Then we do another work, another headline, which is production. And one production step would be putting stamps on envelopes. And another work in production would be writing cards. And another work item would be applying team photos. So we have a number of work items. Somehow buying stamps is stubborn. Something's wrong with buying stamps. But here for production it worked. So now the headline, the work breakdown structure headline, production, is broken down into 3 different tasks: putting stamps on envelope, writing cards, and applying team photos. Now, let's say putting stamps on envelopes takes a few days. So you can do this graphically. You can pull this up, or you can change it in here. You say, writing the cards, this is actually taking a lot. This takes 20 days. So, and now you can add dependencies. So we can say, okay, before we can put stamps on the envelopes, we have to buy the stamps first. So buying stamps becomes a predecessor to putting stamps on envelopes. Same thing for the envelopes. Before we have bought the envelopes, before we haven't bought the envelopes, we can't actually put stamps on envelopes again. So if we click on this task, we do a double click on the task, then we see the data that is involved with that task. Putting stamps on envelopes takes 3 days. That is estimated, and if we take out the estimated checkbox here, then it's 3 days, so you can give that some level of uncertainty. You can actually track how much you have done. So during the project, this becomes also your tool to monitor it. So if we're 75% done with that task, then you see that there's a little black line. I don't know how to zoom in either. Probably, I know, I'm not gonna try. So you see that black line where you see the level of completion. Writing cards and putting stamps on envelopes is in parallel. Then putting cards in envelopes. First, we have to write the cards. We can, after we've written them, we can apply team photos and see how it shifts out. And this tool also knows that we're not working on the weekend, so you can actually exempt the weekend. And then putting cards in envelopes, obviously that is only possible after we've done all of that. Then we can put a milestone ready for mailing. A milestone is a task that has zero duration. So ready for mailing would be an event. And now we say, okay, once we've put the cards into the envelope, they are ready for mailing. Now we have more tasks here, and we have the team tasks. Team, and we said take pictures. But before that, we have to schedule appointments. Both are team tasks, so I put them under teams. And before I can take pictures, I have to schedule appointments, obviously. And taking pictures takes a lot longer. So you see the team tasks, and then we have the dependency on applying team photos. Can only be done after we've taken the pictures. And so you see that we have work streams, or we have different work streams, like the team work stream, the production work stream, and the purchasing work stream, but you also see the dependencies between the work streams. And we could do a milestone for all team activities. Team activities done would be a milestone. Complete. So we say after we have done all the team activities, link everything if we want to this milestone, then this would be 18th of May, then all the team activities are done, and then production is independent of the attendance of the team, for example. Let's look at buy stamps, why this is so stubborn. Because we can say buy stamps is cards. Here we see the successor to buy cards is putting stamps on envelopes. So you also see this listing. If we go to putting stamps on envelope, we would see that in the predecessor, Vorgänger, we would see buy cards. We can also manage resources. No, we have not talked about resources here, but there's more columns. You see here the successor, predecessor also in this, or predecessor in this column. So what is the prerequisite task? And you can apply resources. So you can say, this is Peter. And now it gives me an error because I need to use a resource table. So first of all, I need to set up resources before I can deal with resources. So here I can say Peter, and there's probably a number of things that Peter can do, and Peter is really expensive, 300 euro per hour. Peter does that. So we go back to the Gantt chart, and now let's see if we can apply Peter. So you see that Peter is now doing this task. So you can also do a resource planning, and across the project that you can then see how the people in the project are utilized. That is the core functionality, and I would encourage you, and I see that you guys have already started, I would encourage you to play around with this tool or another one if you have another one available to you at your hands. And I will also want to give you a task. I want to give you some homework. Where I put it? Oh. For your company, pick a product, service that you will develop. Create a work breakdown structure with 15 activities or more required for the development of this product. Based on the work breakdown structure, create a Gantt chart containing a project plan which contains milestones and dependencies in the shown way. Every once in a while, this is also a task that you have to do for the exam, by the way, because it's very typical, and I just want you to work with that style of tool. So the idea is, you join your team in your company, you think about a virtual product or a service, something you've done you've done work before, so you probably have some product that you're thinking of. Now think of what would you do to do this product or the next version or whatever innovation you want. Create a work breakdown structure. Think about meaningful headlines, something. So don't put just work items like write cards. This is not this is a headline, and this Christmas card example was really simple, but a more meaningful headline would be to summarize really like production and purchasing, or a quality or type of work, testing work, design work, whatever. There's no rule. It's just something you try to break it down into domains. That is the thing about eat the elephant in slices. Then it's easier to think about the different things that you have to do. If you start with a more abstract headline, and then you don't, for example, if you put purchasing as a headline, you think of what are all the things, all the material that we need, or material, or mechanical, whatever. And then I want you to do this work breakdown structure first, and every activity becomes then a line in your project plan, in your Gantt chart, and every headline of the work breakdown structure becomes one of these summary lines, where I could not bring the by stamps below for some reason. Yeah, and I want you to have the Gantt chart. I want you to do these dependencies. And would be great if you not only had linear dependencies, but sometimes I get like, it looks like a stair. So task 1, task 2, task 3, it's a sequential line. But very often projects are not sequential, because we can do photos with the team at the same time where somebody else buys cards. So these two activities are not linked. And it would be nice if your project plan would reflect that. And when you do the dependencies, where you need a requirement first until something else happens, you see something that's called a critical path. So you see the duration that your project will have, at least, because all the dependencies add up, and that will give you a later state for the completion of that particular project. And I want you to think about some milestones. So some important anchor points in your project where you say, okay, I'm now done with everything that has to do with team, or I'm done with the whole design process. Design freeze would be a typical milestone in a product development project. And then afterwards you start with the production, and you do first production runs and so on, but you have done the design freeze. So basically development hands over the design to the production people. And I want you to think about some of these milestones just to get you familiar with the tool. You don't have to, but it would be nice if you also would think about resources. So think about, you can put in names, but you can also put in functions like head of production and head of marketing, or worker ABC or something, and then assign resources. We will look at some of your, and if you do it with Project Libre, if that fits, that would be easy. Then we can just call up your original project plan and use the original files. If you do it with another tool, then please provide a PDF so I can pull up the PDF file. We will do more work on project management the next class, next Friday. Are there any thoughts and questions? Sorry, my voice is completely leaving me now. Is the task understood? Any questions about the task?
Could you repeat about the milestones? I didn't get it.
Yes, the milestone. Let's look. Let's go back to look at the example. The milestone was team activities done. So it's an activity that has 0 days. And then when you have when you plan a 0-day activity, it becomes this little diamond shape. So it's a square that is set up on a corner, as you see here. Is this too small to read this picture?
I can read it.
Okay. So another milestone is here, ready for mailing. So these are just important, events, or when a number of tasks have been completed, and basically that's a prerequisite to start another part of the process. So ready for mailing. So the whole mailing thing would be another activity that because we have different destinations, we have different carriers and so on. So the whole mailing thing is another activity. But first we have to clear that milestone, ready for mailing. Before we don't have all the cards ready for mailing, we can't mail it. So that milestone becomes an important event that kind of also segments the the planning of the project. So usually you identify a number of milestones in the project, and then you can also track when these milestones happen. It's easier than tracking all the tasks individually when you're the project manager. So maybe you have 10 milestones. One is May 18, one is June 17, and so on. So if the milestone May 18 slips to May 25th, for example, 1 week, then you know, okay, there is something, my project is slipping because my milestones are slipping, and then it's easier to track. So usually you have these milestones because they're prerequisite for other work streams, for other items. They're easier to manage, and they also partition the project into important phases and sections. And obviously for the milestone to work in the tool, you have to link all the other tasks or the tasks that lead up to the milestone with the milestone itself. So everything that has to be basically fulfilled to trigger that milestone has to be linked. So when any of these tasks now take longer, like we can now overrun our time here, then you see that this milestone shifts out, and because this other task depends on this milestone or this task, then everything else shifts out in the project as well. So that's the idea when you later on track then the tasks and milestones. Understood?
Yeah, thank you.
It would be better if you made it a bit bigger. Okay, I can try. Okay, any other questions? I know. Now it's big. Any other questions? Okay. If you're happy with your assignment, then thank you very much. You have a great weekend. Next time we will, again, as I said, we will also do some more work on project management. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. Enjoy the sun. It's getting warm. Bye-bye.